Okay, sorry about that. Again, must apologize. My third video got somehow erased. There wasn't enough space, so without further ado, this is part 3, another remake of part 3. Um, so I did pause it off from the last moment of flicker. We will keep going into that. And I'm Hana Gamer Pony. Without further ado, let's continue on the story flicker.
Flick, and one half fell limply to the road, as the rest sprang back.
Read by Forrest McGilvray. Sorry, I forgot to mention. That's what I was trying to think. I was like, what am I forgetting? I'm forgetting my intro, and then I'm forgetting something else. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Back into the tree, like some kind of frightened animal. Fluttershy, fly up there and move the branches out of the way, please, Twilight instructed, shaking herself free of her strained attempts to pull down the rope. Reluctantly, Fluttershy hovered right up to the trees and tentatively brushed the tangled leaves aside. Then a gasp escaped the winged mare. Below, everybody else was hard-pressed not to do the same. Even Spike, who had reclaimed his seat upon Twilight's back, if only to get a better view. Directly above them, a curved wooden surface was almost completely consumed by the trees, and upon its rotted face, a set of once elegantly written white words read simply, New Horizon. Well, that's certainly something you don't see every day, Twilight observed as she looked up at what her intellectually brilliant mind had identified as the wooden hull of some kind of ship. Every pony gathered around the bewildered princess, their eyes cast upwards to the wooden shape as the parted leaves rustled about. The shadow of its mass was visible as a great dark scar amidst the forest, leading far back into the depths of the trees. Furthermore, now that it was clear that the thing was up there, every pony began to notice more parts of its wreckage. Scraps of splintered wood lay hidden in moist earth, and many more ropes hung loosely, the moss and fungus that had been colonizing their soggy fibers, making them appear like tangled vines. Even some of these trees bore the scars of a ragged impact, and many more buckled and sagged under the weight of the wrecked bough. "How do you suppose it got up there?" asked Fluttershy, gently floating back to the road with several soft wing beats. "It must be some kind of skyship. I read about them a few years ago. Originally, they were made by Earth ponies thousands of years ago so they could trade with Pegasi over long distances. Now that there's the equestrian mail service, they're not as common," Twilight gladly explained. "Yes, I saw one in Canterlot a few years ago, too, although that marvelous thing was renovated as a part of a private collection. It certainly wasn't anything like this old wreck," Rarity added, sounding only a little disgusted as she waved a hoof up at a particularly large hole in the ship's side. "That's just it, though. Most ships that fly today are either vintage or—" Twilight began. Then she paused and narrowed her eyes. "Illegal." As the word left her muzzle, she became the focus of every pony's attention and was quick to elaborate. "Princess Celestia told me about the skyjack trade once. That's what the new crew of ships like this sometimes call themselves. They're mostly thieves and mercenaries. Griffins, ponies, it doesn't matter. But all of that usually happens far away from Equestria, where the skies aren't too heavily regulated." "Well, that explains how it ended up here then," Starlight commented, earning a curious look from Twilight. The lilac unicorn winced slightly, fearing she may have interrupted something. Yet, when any pony failed to add anything, she tentatively went on. "Well, you did say the Everfree Forest skies aren't monitored by the Pegasi, so it could have slipped through," she elaborated. "To think ruffians such as this coming so close to Ponyville? It's certainly unsettling to say the least," Rarity observed, crossing a hoof over her chest and looking sharply away. "It's downright creepy, that's what it is." Spike shivered. "One thing's for sure, it shouldn't be here." Twilight's eyes followed the long shadow of a ship as it disappeared into the trees. The alicorn turned away from the road, her horn beginning to glow as she peered into the gloom and took a step away from the road. Twilight, what are you doing? Spike asked, tapping Twilight's head as he tried not to look at the scary trees. Well, we can't just leave this here without investigation. If any pony is doing anything illegal this close to Ponyville, or Canterlot for that matter, I want to know. Twilight answered, her tone becoming firm. Yeah, but I think crashing may have put a stop to anything that they're doing, Twilight.
For real?
The dragon retorted, eyes darting up to the shattered hull of the ship. He does have a point, Twilight. We'll be late to meet the others if we dally. Rarity added,
yeah, let's not dally.
Let's
not do any of that.
The purple unicorn sighed. I just want to take a quick look. It won't be more than a minute. Her slightly eager tone didn't make it difficult.
A minute? A minute? Are you kidding me? A minute? You know what happens in a minute? Death. A lot of dead. That's a lot of healthy amount of dead for you. Yes. A minute.
Any pony to guess that there was more than just an urge to investigate in her reasoning. There was more than a little excitement there, too.
No,
and it wasn't hard to assume that this was the first time the always open and willing to learn princess had seen something like this. She was almost like a giddy foal, begging her parents to take them to some new toy store.
Well, that's no toy store.
The facades of it simply being her royal duty to investigate, waned every second she thought about what she might find. Finally, Rarity gave a huff. Okay, but if I get kidnapped by angry sky pirates, I'm blaming you, Twilight, the alabaster mare said firmly, even though the look on her face particularly told every pony she'd have no problem dealing with such a situation should it arise.
There we go.
Twilight nodded appreciatively before moving towards into the twisting depths of the dense undergrowth.
No!
Spike clinging low to her back and trying his best not to look terrified as he was forced to dodge yet more hanging vines and branches. Fluttershy,
no.
Are you coming, dear?
No, hell
asked,
no!
Turning back to her Pegasus friend. Fluttershy's eyes were stuck in a circle of darting up to the ship and back to the forest around her as she stood like a yellow statue in the middle of the muddy road.
No.
Only with the sight of Rarity waving a hoof to get her attention did she finally respond. You want to get off the road? In the middle of the Everfree Forest?
For real?
She asked timidly,
really?
Not quite as concerned about hiding her fear as Spike was. Only for a short moment, dear. Besides, you can always wait here if you want to. The
Guys, I want you to real quick look up the Everfree Forest. Like, if you're a My Little Pony fan, look up the map of Equestria and look at Everfree Forest. You see how big that motherfucker is? You go in there, you're dead. You consider dead.
Offered
That's a lot of nut coming back.
Moving off after Twilight, taking great care not to get any of her attire any dirtier than it already was.
Cares
At
about
the
dirt.
moment, Starlight and
I care about my life
both
more
looked
than
to
I
one
do
another
dirt.
with weary eyes before the former
Time to get dirty,
finally spoke. I'm gonna go take a look. Like Twilight said, it's not every day you see a skyship like this. Starlight rationalized, unable to cover up the fact that despite everything, her own curiosity was blooming. Fluttershy gulped, but nodded as the pink mare disappeared into the gloom after the others.
This is a black
She
and
took
mild,
another
guys,
look up
okay?
at the hall,
I don't want
then back at the
no
darkness,
negativity in
then
the comments.
back
No,
up.
none of that.
The timid cycle
is a black and
continued
mild.
for all 5 seconds
Okay.
before the ship gave an almighty creak and shifted amidst the canopy. With a sharp eep of alarm, Fluttershy jumped into the air and sped off towards Starlight's tail before it could vanish into the shadows. On second thought, I think I'll stay with you, she said with a nervous stutter, daring to glance back at the slowly vanishing road. Starlight just offered a friendly smile and nodded as both of them pushed forwards through the thick vegetation. Nevertheless, as the shadows grew and the thick forest closed in about them, Starlight couldn't blame Fluttershy for her caution. An illegal skyship, not seen by ponies in Equestria for decades, crashing in the middle of one of the most dangerous places in the kingdom? It certainly wasn't a situation any pony found themselves in every day. That was all made worse as the muddy surface grew thicker under hoof. A mass of tangled roots, rotting logs, and fallen leaves were the only things to break up the consistent squelching. Puddles of water shimmered in the magical glow of Twilight's horn as both she and Rarity paused. Before them, the trees hung low, creating a small tunnel under the ship as the huge pieces of shattered wood tilted downwards towards the ground. Both Starlight and Fluttershy stopped beside the others, looking ahead to where the part of the ship that had become lodged in the trees appeared to have been snapped in two. Sharp spikes of splintering wood just jutted out at every angle, as if the whole thing had been brutally twisted apart. Most lumps of torn rubble lay scattered over the trees,
No, thank you.
like wicked
No,
decorations.
thank you. That's a lot of no
Half
thank you
in
for
the
me.
tangled floor of the forest.
I'm probably
as the
going to go
whole place
outside. I'm
had
going to go
begun
back to
slowly eat away
Ponyville
at the
and drink me some
invading
juice
object.
and
The
sit
tattered
there in a
fabrics
lawn
of
chair
what
and
must
eat
have
me an
been
apple
some
from the
kind of
apple
giant
orchard.
balloon hung down like a dirty, wet rag.
I'm already
Its
there.
surface was a sick patchwork
You don't
of
know-
stains,
you don't know how fast I'd
rips,
be out of
and
there.
moss. It covering the way ahead like a soggy curtain. Shifting the waterlogged sheet aside with their magic, Twilight, Spike, Starlight, and Rarity were the first to creep through. Fluttershy following close behind as her eyes darted to every part of the eerie wreckage. Hovering slightly, she bit one of her forehooves nervously, looking to the dark interior of the front half as
I'll
it
be
sludged
like,
in the mud.
nah, no. I
Beyond,
ain't going in
the
there.
rear half of the
You
ship
guys out of
slumped
your
lazily.
mind.
Wooden innards and shattered cargo splayed out over the tangled forest floor. Barrels had been burst apart like watermelons, and large crates bled seeping trails of vibrant alchemical powder. The battered remnants of several rusted cages also sat amongst the scattered wreckage, as did glistening hints of gold, silver, and gems. At the point where the ship
I
had
still wouldn't
split,
touch the
each
shit.
of its floors were
It's covered in
visible
chemicals.
as water dribbled down across their broken remains. Darkness swarmed within. The only break in its constant appearance was the glint of metal as the magical glow passed by. It took a great effort not to think about the eerie gloom, nor the ravenous forest that was slowly trying to reclaim the land that the wreck had stolen from it. Instead, the hole into the ship's shrouded interior was what captivated most attention, and Twilight was the first to move towards it. "Well, they certainly won't be delivering this anywhere anytime soon," she observed, dabbing a pool of running
That's
pink
not
powder with
funny.
her hoof. "What gave it away?" Spike deadpanned, swiftly adding, "Can we go now? This place really gives me the creeps." "Just a minute, Spike. I want to see if there's anything to say how this got here," Twilight responded, as she peered into the rear half of the ship. "I think it's pretty obvious that they crashed, Twilight," the dragon
real.
retorted.
Very
"He's
obvious.
right, Twilight. Any pony who was on this old thing looks to be gone," Rarity added, looking down at the mixing colors on the forest floor with distaste.
Maybe they're not gone.
"I can't fathom why any pony would go through so much effort to smuggle such
Maybe
things.
they're
Why, this is
inside
no
a
more than
egg
colored
now.
dye. It's probably some kind of exotic arcane salt. It's sometimes used to make all
Oh, I'm
sorts
sorry, I
of horrible
swallowed
enchantments
it
and
all.
spells," Twilight responded, glancing at Starlight.
Well, look
The
at the
pink
cover.
unicorn shied
Look at the
away
cover.
slightly, reminded
Look at that
of what
cover.
herself
You already
had
tell
once
it's an
been
egg.
like.
I could tell
Yet,
it's an egg.
she didn't feel that was Twilight's intention. Instead, it sounded as if her mentor was looking for another intellectual opinion on
My
the
bad.
matter. "She's right.
That's all
I've
good,
seen
though.
ponies using stuff like this to make all sorts of things.
You don't even know what
It's
happens
highly
next.
flammable for one. In fact, an explosion might be the reason this thing ended up down here," Starlight explained, earning an appreciative smile from her mentor. "I'm going to check the back, see if I can find anything in the captain's cabin," Twilight continued, before trotting further down into the ship's sunken rear half. "Perhaps I'll wait here, darling. This place is dirty enough on the outside already," Rarity responded, then glanced up at Fluttershy as the Pegasus gave a small sigh of relief. "Yeah, I'm staying here too," Spike added, jumping from Twilight's back and running over to the others.
Wise
Twilight
decision.
just rolled her eyes,
Wise.
then
Let's
glanced
go
at
home.
Starlight. "Starlight?"
Ready to go
The
home?
unicorn looked between her timid friends and
I
her
think we should
bold
go
mentor. Then she glanced into the depths of the ship and gulped. There were a great many things in her mind telling her not to go into the darkness. Then again, she couldn't just let Twilight go alone. "Yeah, I'm coming." She relented reluctantly,
What
before
are you?
tentatively trotting over to Twilight's side.
Anyway,
Twilight nodded before...
I'm gonna stop it right here. This is enough time we have for 15 minutes. I'm Hana Gamer Pony, and we'll be right back. This has been part 3 of Flicker, a redone version of part 3. I'm so sorry that the first version did not publish, so I'll try to make up for it for the next video, but I'll be seeing you guys later in the next part of chapter 1 of Flicker.